Hello and welcome to Fierce. This program celebrates the diversity of LGBTIQ identities and perspectives. Fierce is produced in Bundjalung country at 2NCR Lismore and can also be heard on podcast at fiercefm.podbean.com and in New Zealand on Fresh FM, as well as all over Australia through the Community Radio Network. This is Peter Lena, and I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands where you are listening. They took care of these lands sustainably for hundreds of thousands of years and then shared this land with us at great cost to their own lives. I want to honour and thank them for the work they have done and continue to do to care for country and to sit on the earth. I also want to thank the fairies and crones who came before us in history to fight for our human rights to love fiercely.
Kia ora, this is Kelly.
And this is Nick.
And we're from Nelson Pride, New Zealand. And you're listening to Fierce FM.
Hello and welcome to Fierce. Tonight we're very lucky to be chatting to Matthias Schwenteck, co-founder of the School of Consent, with Robyn, Dalzen and Betty Martin. Matthias is living as a global nomad. He's been on the path for nearly 20 years with different healing modalities of meditation, counselling, bodywork, shamanism, trauma research, neurophysiology from around the world.
Hello.
You're very well loved here and well known. Tell us, what's it like for same-sex attracted people at your workshops?
We have all the same nervous system. People of all genders are welcome. So we are inclusive of all different gender identifications.
The Tantra world can be quite heteronormative. Do you find it that way?
Yeah, pretty much. So I've seen that in many workshops and on festivals, people really taking care of a gender balance, and I think that is totally awkward. We just really opening up our workshops beyond gender balance. In the Tantra world, it's just pretty much based on this polarization. The dualistic idea, male and female, and yin and yang, is complete bullshit in my perception. And this work, what we do, is neurologically based on our nervous system. The work that we offer and provide, it's not based on attraction, and it's not based on satisfying layers of attraction. Every individual, it doesn't matter, male identified or female identified, has the capacity in their skin, specifically on their hands, to reach out to another being, to another person, and can experience the sensation of pleasure on their skin that is independent on the other person's gender identification. If people choose to work only with the same gender or choose only with the opposite gender, everybody can make the choice who they want to work with in our workshops.
What is a ConsentLab?
The ConsentLab is a 4-hour workshop that I have created. It's a space where people can come together and practicing the quality and the values of consent in a safe container to learn and to go deeper with other people they don't know. And then we have a connection where we say hello to each other and slowly introducing and building up to the dynamic of consent.
It sounds like there's a ritual to it, a process that happens repeatedly each time you meet.
Yeah, this is exactly the idea. The ConsentLab is an ongoing weekly or every second week kind of meeting spot where people can come and having a first taste of the wheel of consent, or after a workshop where people can come and practice what they have learned in the wheel of consent and can invite others to just have a kind of a glimpse or a first taste of what the wheel of consent has to offer.
How wonderful. And you're setting these up internationally all over the place.
Yeah, that's true. I started in Berlin a while ago. I just finished one in Copenhagen, where I am right now. My next stop will be Amsterdam, and then I come over to Australia, where we'll be in Byron and in Melbourne in November.
So you're coming back to this area in November, and you'll be setting up some consent labs, and you're looking for teachers to run them.
Yes, that's right. So everybody who is interested in holding a safe, consent-based environment based on these two main questions, ask to somebody else who is in tune with their own limits, or we just showing them how to in tune with their own limits. This is what people can provide to their community
to find deeper layers of connection and consent with another.
And so listeners, we've had Matthias on the show before talking all about the wheel of consent, and also there's some wonderful YouTube videos that Matthias has created that you can find on YouTube around the wheel of consent. So if you want to know more, listen to that. But if you want to know more about these consent labs in November in the Byron region and Sydney, where can they go to find information on that, Matthias?
So I've created a new web presence that calls somaticonsent.com. And this is where I have a calendar and as well some explanation of what the Consent Lab is for participants who just want to join, and as well for people who have experience in facilitating and knowing what the wheel is and want to learn how to hold that space for others. The Consent Lab is welcome to everybody. All people who provide as a facilitator, I'm very selective that people A, have their language together, and B, learn how to be really inclusive to everybody and hold a space that is welcome for everybody.
And so what have you learnt in the last couple of months around consent, Matthias?
Oh, that's a really good question. I was chewing mainly on one specific topic. So the wheel of consent in its basic is coming from a power and surrender workshop from Harry Fedis, based on these two questions: what do you want to do to me and what do you want me to do to you? What is literally a broader question where the word power and the dynamics of power are important. But when it comes to the wheel of consent related to the way our Betty Martin further developed is, it is based on the direction of the gift. And there is no power dynamic in the direction of the gift. It is the direction of gratitude and generosity when it comes to giving and receiving that is heart opening, creating intimate and vulnerable connection with another. And I really acknowledge the other dynamic where the origin of the wheel is from, that there are sometimes the direction of power in the game, and that we need to acknowledge that and becoming aware when power is playing and when the direction of the gift is in place. And both of them need a place in the dynamic of consent. When the giver has enough time to tune in, notice what my body reaction is, value my limits, trust that they are important, and being capable to communicate a clear no or a yes, or when I'm willing to do and say, yes, I'm not really kind of sure here, but just for you, baby. And just for this amount of time, yes.
Oh, beautiful. What a gorgeous man you are. Thank you so much, Matthias. Really appreciate you coming on to Fierce again. Have fun over there in Europe, and we'll see you in November.
I'm really grateful that you invited me back to your show. I love what you offer. I love what you do, and saying hello to the entire community out there.
Yay.
Thank you, Peter.
Hi, I'm Linda Jade Icely from thesexwitch.com.au, and you're listening to Fierce.
A witch who's a mystic and a wild embodier of a powerful connection to the unseen realms. It's Winter Jade Icely. Whereabouts are you at the moment?
I'm in Melbourne. I just landed.
And you're heading up to Byron soon for a workshop called the Dark Erotic?
Yes, retreat into the Dark Erotic.
And I believe you've been doing that workshop all over the place.
I have been taking this work throughout Australia, and I've just come back from Europe, having 8 weeks over there as well.
Any seminal experiences over there in Europe with your workshops that you wanted to share?
Yeah, actually, I was in a workshop in Samothrace, Greece on my 42nd birthday, and as a gift, I was hung upside down over a waterfall to signify the 42 midlife transit, which is when everything in your life sort of switched upside down. It's like midlife crisis sort of moments. And yeah, I got strung up off this beautiful tree over this waterfall in the middle of nature, and we had a beautiful ceremony. Yeah, so it was a really poignant half an hour for me. The ritualization of actually that stage of my life really felt that drop, as in everything that I've created I no longer want to sort of identify with. So I did a beautiful ritual calling in all of those people that I know to release me of the roles that I play in their lives so I can start again.
Wow, what amazing magical friends you must have to do that with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you've been connecting with the unseen realms since you were little, and you're also a qualified social worker and holistic counsellor, working with adults and children with trauma or abuse or crisis. So tell us, what are the unseen realms?
I was always very aware that there are other worlds and veils to other unseen inner realms that aren't visible on this 3D world but still existed. And so I'd often have conversations with, you could say, spirits my ancestors. Since I was quite young, I've always been very connected to those inner worlds. It's a continuous guide for me in my life, so a very important part of my life to drop into those spaces where I'm actually sensing and feeling the unseen and receiving guidance of my life and my work. And so, yeah, as a child, it was something that I inherently had, and it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I realized that it was not something everyone was connected to. So it felt like just something very normal for me to have conversations with the stars, for example, or to have creatures in rocks or trees and have conversations with the people that I couldn't see.
Will you talk about the limitless nature of the soul?
Basically, we're all souls having an embodied experience. So we've all come in with this part of us that's not affected by life at all. So when I say the limitless nature of the soul, it means that there's parts of us that aren't our gender, aren't our identity, aren't our traumas or our memories or experiences that actually exist as watchers throughout our life, and there's a sense of timelessness and limitlessness in that. And so a lot of my work, we work on that level of soul, the parts of us that are formless, and have come here to have a human embodied experience. So I see gender and identities as sheaths to the soul. So they're like costumes or masks that we play with and dance with, that actually that's what sits behind that is our soul, which is none of those things.
I imagine your work is dancing between that as well as something really embodied as far as sexuality and enjoying a connection as one being with another being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you talk about the sublime state of rapture, and I'm thinking, well, that's probably a merging of both those beings into one. But do you have a preference? Like, are you at your most bliss when you're feeling your oneness, or when you're in a connection with another being as a being?
That's a really good question. Actually, my preference is to have both together. So to connect up with someone from the deepest place of my soul. And when we connect with another person from that place, we fall into oneness together. So it's this experience of almost falling through each other till we become the oneness together. That's obviously my preference, is to be in connection, but to be connecting from a very deep place and a place of our deepest core, as opposed to our personality and the duality of masculine, feminine, man or woman. My deepest longing actually is to go beyond that and to find a soul connection that we can, relate on this world in an embodied sense, but still have a thread back to who we are in a deep place.
What an amazing life you must lead to help people connect in those ways. Are you saying that at the Dark Erotic, people will be experiencing that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the Dark Erotic, we're wanting to peel away all the masks in the way of actually our authentic, limitless parts of us. And from that place, journey together, dance together, experience the body together, our eros together, rituals. The Dark Erotic also goes into the parts of us that we hide from the world and ourselves, so we can actually lever them up into the light of our awareness, and from that place integrate them so we can be whole beings together. And so it's quite a journey into the self, but actually a shared journey together. So the last time I ran this, we had a beautiful weekend of deep connection, intimacy, and authentic relating.
Do you need to be single or in a polyamorous relationship, or can you turn up as a couple that isn't monogamous?
Yeah, look, all was welcome. So actually, the last retreat I ran, there was a mixture of monogamous couples, single people, non-binary people. It was a really beautiful, diverse group of genders and sexuality and identities. Even if you're with a couple, still an individual soul. Couples are welcome to dance together and to share practices together, but actually we create a group feel during this work. So it's beautiful to be open to others. And it doesn't mean you have to be erotic with others or sexual with others, but to open your heart to others. And so the encouragement is, if a couple do come, that they have a certain level of willingness to open their heart to the group, but there's no pressure to do anything with anyone else. And my space is a full permission space, where I invite everyone to go as far as they want or as little as they want, and if they want to step out, they're welcome to, and there's no pressure to be anything.
If someone was coming a second time to the Dark Erotic, would they have a completely different experience, or would they be going through the same processes?
Yeah, good question. I work in the mysteries, and so although there might be some similarities in some of the practices, the way I work is listening to the empty center, listening to the mystery. So actually all of my workshops are very different depending on what wants to come to life. And so I'm surrendered to that. It's never the same.
And so why call it the Dark Erotic? Why not call it the Heart Erotic or the Light Erotic?
That's a good question. I call it the Dark Erotic because we're going into the energy of darkness, which is connected to the body and connected to matter. And so in the polarity of light and dark, light is often connected to the sort of the upper realms of lightness and of spirit, and the dark is connected to the deep realms of matter, so the body, the earth. So we're deeply diving into the bodies during this weekend. But also I call it dark because we're going to shadow hunt. So we go into the places where we hide maybe our desires or our power or our preferences or our sexual urges because of guilt or shame or fear. And so we kind of mine into those places in ourselves to bring them into integration. We all have some erotic shadow. If we don't go into it, actually they often play unconsciously through our lives and they'll drive our desires unconsciously. So what we're doing in this weekend is bringing light of awareness to those parts inside ourselves so we can clear them and integrate them so we can live more fully with them in the light.
And so you identify as a witch. They're parallel to dark magic and white magic and black magic.
For me, light and dark magic is all around intention. And so dark magic is when you're using magic or you're using your powers to harm or hurt or manipulate. And light magic is, it could be seen as love and healing and expansion. So I think in a way that's how I would differentiate light and dark magic.
Is there a song that really speaks to you of magic and even the Dark Erotic?
Wow, the one that comes to mind is a band called Failure, and the song is called The Journey, and it's a track I love, and I often play it in the morning when we do a morning dance session.
So we're chatting to Winter Jade Icely, who is a witch and a mystic and a wild embodier of so much, and we're chatting to her about magic. And you mentioned that dark magic or black magic could be to do with harming or manipulating. And I'm wondering about your thoughts around that, because manipulation in the person doing it might think it's love because they're trying to take care of somebody.
Yeah, firstly, I think I'd like to say that, you know, there's this kind of conspiracy around witchcraft and magic in a way, and it's, although it's got a lot more coming into more awareness now, and it's almost like a buzzword, there's still a lot of stigma around it. And I kind of want to just highlight that actually most of us are using magic without even realizing it, because magic is really around the intention of our thoughts and our will. And so people are using, you could say, black magic to each other constantly in the way, if we think about someone or we're projecting energy towards someone that's not loving, like hurtful names or words or intentions. You know, witchcraft kind of brings it into more of a practice, I suppose. I think that in relation to black magic, it's manipulation if the other person on the other end doesn't offer their consent to what's happening. It's not really manipulation if there is a level of consent to it and awareness of what the outcome is.
You talk about the magic of the natural world. Are you a Wiccan, or how do you connect to magic, and what is the magic of the natural world?
That's a beautiful question. I don't really identify as any modality of witchcraft. I could be Wiccan, but yeah, to me, I'm not really attached to any structure or the creed as such. To me, the magic of the natural world is a recognition that we live in a world that's truly alive. Science is catching up with us a little bit more, and so are leaders. I know in New Zealand, there was a law passed a few years ago where they recognised that rivers as a living being and were now protected. So the rivers in New Zealand are seen as something that's alive. And I know in Indigenous cultures in Australia as well, that the earth was seen as a living being, and trees and plants and animals had their own nature spirits and consciousness. There's been recent studies that have shown that trees actually have a heartbeat, you know, and they communicate to each other. That's the magic of the natural world. We're living in a world that's alive, waiting for us to see it, actually, and to engage and connect with it.
That's a very beautiful, deep ecology. And how do you bring sex into that with people?
Well, there's another. You know, there's another recognition that that actually everything is erotic by nature. So eros is the aliveness of life. It's what actually propels a seed to form into a plant and push itself through the earth. But eros is the very living fabric of aliveness. And so actually everything is erotic. The whole world is erotic. And so when you're tuning into the frequency of eros, which is the aliveness, you can have arousing feelings in the body. I've had experiences of feeling highly aroused in nature. I've had experiences of being in the ocean and feeling the awakening my body in beautiful ways. Or I've had experiences of walking in the forest and feeling arousal and desire emerge from just the aliveness of the trees. And so that's where sexuality and eros link into the natural world and to all of life, actually. And I don't know whether you've had that experience of just feeling really turned on or alive, or, you know, feeling your life force in wild places, but it's certainly tangible, that energy.
I'm definitely an ecosexual.
Yeah, oh, beautiful, yeah. It's really common, actually.
Yeah.
It's really common, yeah.
In your workshops, you're talking about heart sex. So tell us about that.
Yeah, the heart as an organism in ancient cultures was considered a wise centre of the body. And actually in cultures like in ancient Egyptians and also the Greeks, saw the heart as actually the main centre. So it had its own brain in a way. In a fetus, when it in utero, actually the heart is formed before the brain itself. So there's, again, lots of research starting to back up this idea that the heart as an organism in the body has its own intelligence, its own life force, its own way of communicating, and it creates an electromagnetic field around the body. And so when people come together through their heart and they activate their heart, they generate an alchemy of electromagnetic fields which can come into a beautiful merging together. It's what I call heart sex, and our hearts can fall through another. We go into these beautiful transcendental experiences of the oneness of the universe. It's a gateway to the soul, and it's a gateway to actually falling through another person. And so heart sex is really tapping into the love that we feel in ourselves, and the way you can do that is to call in your mind's eye a person or a place you love, And then when we activate that and expand that, and then when we share that with another, we're going to this beautiful erotic nature of the heart, breathing and moving from that place, and together we're creating beautiful electromagnetic field of love.
You do work with private practice as well as in groups.
Yeah.
Any tips for people that are new at consent to be able to practice consent in an enlivening way?
Yeah, totally. Part of consent is knowing what does feel good or not good in your body or around you or when engaging with another person. So one practice I'll give to clients is to actually start to really be aware of in their life and their day-to-day what does feel good and what doesn't in their bodies when engaging with people. The first part of consent is knowing what feels like a yes and knowing what doesn't feel like a yes. And anything that doesn't feel like a yes is a no. Anything that's a maybe is a no. So starting to tune into that day-to-day is the first piece. And also I think, that in part of my work is in giving people full permission, which is something we don't often get in life. We're very conditioned to have to play a role or follow a certain rule or be guided by others. But in my work, my spaces, it's really permission to follow whatever is true to you in each moment and to actually follow that through. And full permission, you see that with children a lot. Like my daughter, when she was young, if someone would say to her, come and give me a cuddle, she'd say no, when she was 3. Or if she opened a gift and she didn't like it, she'd say, I don't like the gift. Children, when they're young, show a beautiful authenticity around consent, around what they like, what they don't like, and what they'll tolerate and what they won't. And over time, we lose that a bit because of the conditioning of our roles.
And so it's happening very soon in Byron Bay, but it's probably happening in other places too. It's called the Dark Erotic.
In Byron Bay, 2nd to the 4th of August. And then the second one I'm running in Melbourne is a residential Dark Erotic, and I think that's 11th to the 13th of October. And so they're on my website, which is thesexwitch.com.au, and there's places for both still available.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on to Fierce Winter.
Oh, great conversation.
See you in the Dark Erotic.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Fierce. This program celebrates the diversity of LGBTIQ identities and perspectives. Fierce is produced in Bundjalung Country at 2NCR Lismore, and can also be heard on podcast at fiercefm.podbean.com and in New Zealand on Fresh FM, as well as all over Australia through the Community Radio Network.